When I arrived at my son's wedding, he was waiting for me at the door and said, "I didn't invite you, Mom. The whole family has decided you're no longer part of us. Please, leave." I smiled and replied calmly, "All right, son, but don't forget to check your phone." I left. When he checked his phone, you know that moment when your heart stops beating but you're still standing? That's exactly what I felt when my son, Henry, extended his arm in front of my body, blocking my entry into the church. I was immaculate. I had chosen a petrol blue dress that cost £500, a fortune for someone who had always lived simply. I spent 3 hours at the salon that morning, nails done, hair tied in an elegant bun that the hairdresser swore would be perfect for the groom's mother. Imported perfume I'd saved for years for a special occasion. And what occasion could be more special than the wedding of my only son? The church was beautiful. White flowers covered every inch of the entrance. Guests in their finest attire were entering, laughing, taking photos. I watched it all with a nervous smile on my face, clutching the leather handbag that had belonged to my mother. Inside it, my mobile vibrated insistently. Messages I didn't reply to, calls I ignored. I knew what was about to happen. As I ascended the steps, my son appeared like a shadow at the door. Henry looked different, thinner, his face tense, deep dark circles under his eyes. The charcoal gray suit he wore was clearly too expensive for our means, and I knew exactly who had chosen it. Behind him, 2 security guards in black suits stood with their arms crossed, as if I were a threat, as if mother was synonymous with danger. "Mom," he began, but his voice faltered. He swallowed hard, looking away. I said nothing, just waited. My heart pounded so loudly I could feel it in my temples, but I kept my face serene. I didn't invite you to be here." Silence. People around began to notice. Curious glances, whispers. The whole family decided. He paused, as if the words burned his mouth. "Decided that you are no longer part of us. Please, Mom, leave." I felt every word like a knife, but no tears fell. Not there, not in front of them. I looked inside the church and saw her, Fabiana, the bride, standing between the pews, in a tight white dress, highlighting a body she always made sure to display. She stared at me with that smirk, that smile of someone who had won. I took a deep breath. "All right, son." My voice was calm, firm, "but don't forget to check your phone." Henry frowned, confused. He opened his mouth to say something, but I was already turning my back. I descended the steps slowly, one by one, head held high, posture impeccable. As my mother, Miriam, taught me, dignity doesn't bow to anyone. I got into the taxi that the driver kept running. I closed the door, and only then, as the car began to pull away from that beautiful church and that son I no longer recognized, only then did a single tear fall. But it wasn't a tear of defeat. It was a tear of someone who had just dropped a bombshell. Because inside that phone, I asked Henry to check, was everything. Every lie, every manipulation, every dirty secret Fabiana had hidden from him for 2 whole years. And in 10 minutes, when he opened that scheduled message, the wedding she had dreamed of so much would collapse like a sandcastle. But for you to understand how I reached this moment, I need to go back in time, back to the day my husband, Oswald, closed his eyes for the last time and left me alone in this world with a single request. Protect our son, Miriam, even if it's from himself. If you want to discover what was on that phone and how a 6-8-year-old mother managed to turn the tables on the most manipulative daughter-in-law you've ever seen, subscribe to the channel now. Because this story is just beginning, and the worst is yet to come. 2 years before that day at the church, I was sitting in a squeaky hospital chair, the smell of disinfectant burning my nostrils. Fluorescent lights flickered on the ceiling, and my husband, Oswald, held my hand with a strength I didn't know he still had. 63 years of life, 42 years of marriage, all summarized in that cold, white room. The cancer was cruel, fast, 6 months from diagnosis to the end. Pancreatic cancer, the kind doctors call silent because by the time you discover it, it's too late. Oswald had always been a discreet, hard-working man. He woke up at 5 a.m. every day to open the small automotive parts factory we built together, brick by brick. I stayed in the office, handling the administration, accounts, suppliers, We were a team, complementing each other, but no one knew that. To Henry, to the neighbors, to everyone, Oswald was just another ordinary worker. We lived in a simple 120 SQM house in a middle-class neighborhood of London. A modest car, unbranded clothes, dinner at home, never inexpensive restaurants. Oswald taught me this: Miriam, money shouts when you want to show off and whispers when you want to save. And we saved. "Promise me one thing," Oswald whispered that last night, his voice hoarse from the morphine. "Don't let anyone know about the money yet. Our son needs to mature first." I promised, even without fully understanding. 3 days later, I buried my husband under a fine rain that seemed to cry along with me. Henry was by my side, holding a black umbrella. He was 40 at the time, single. He worked for a technology company with a reasonable salary. Nothing exceptional. He lived in a rented flat in West London. After the funeral, I sat with our solicitor, Dr. Alistair, a 70-year-old man who had known Oswald since we were young. "Mrs. Miriam, I'll be direct with you." He opened a thick folder. "The estate your husband left is considerable." Considerable was an understatement. The factory, which had been running for 35 years, was worth £250,000. The house we lived in, which Oswald had paid off 20 years ago and completely renovated 5 years ago, was valued at £300,000. We had a 2-bedroom flat rented out in Bloomsbury, which brought in £1,000 a month. Investments in ISAs and government bonds totaled £200,000. And there was a small cottage in the Cotswolds, an inheritance from Oswald's parents, valued at £150,000. Total, £900,000. I was paralyzed, staring at those numbers. "And there's more," Dr. Alistair continued, pushing a sealed envelope towards me. "The will." Oswald was very clear in his instructions. "You can open it now, but he asked that you wait for the right moment to reveal it to Henry." I opened the envelope with trembling hands. Oswald's handwriting was there, as firm as ever. "Miriam, my love, if you are reading this, it's because I've passed. I leave everything in your hands because I trust you as I've never trusted anyone else. Henry will receive his share when he is ready. Not when he reaches a certain age, not when he marries, but when he demonstrates the maturity to value what we achieved with sacrifice. You will know when that moment comes. Until then, protect our legacy and protect yourself too. Not everyone who says they love truly loves. Your eternal Oswald." I folded the letter and tucked it into the bottom of my handbag. I decided not to tell Henry. Not yet. I continued living in the same house, driving the same car, following the same routine. The factory remained under the administration of a trusted manager whom Oswald had trained for years. Profits came into my bank account every month, about £4,000 net, but I kept everything discreet, spent little, invested the rest. Henry never asked. He assumed I lived off his father's pension, and perhaps some savings. He offered financial help 2 or 3 times, which I politely declined, saying, "I'm fine, son, don't worry." I thought I was doing the right thing, keeping the legacy safe until my son showed he was ready to receive it. But then, 6 months after the funeral, Henry appeared at my house one Sunday afternoon. He looked different, smiling too much. That kind of silly smile a man in love has. "Mum, I need to introduce you to someone." I opened the door and saw a blonde woman, tanned, artificial, 6-inch heels, a dress too tight for a Sunday afternoon. She was in her early 30s, at most, with red fake nails, heavy makeup, and a sparkle in her eyes that I couldn't decipher at that moment. "Hello, mother-in-law," she said in a high-pitched voice, extending a handful of rings. "I'm Fabiana. Nice to finally meet you." I shook her hand, cold, calculating, and at that exact moment, even without consciously knowing it, something inside me shivered, because I had just met the person who would try to destroy everything Oswald and I had built. The question I didn't know that Sunday afternoon was who she really was, and why my son, always so sensible, was completely blind to the danger that was walking through the door of our lives. Fabiana entered my living room as if she already owned the place. She didn't take off her heels, didn't ask if she could sit down, just threw herself onto the 3-seater sofa that Oswald and I had bought 15 years ago. She crossed her legs and began to examine every corner of the house with those hawk-like eyes. "What a charming house, Mrs. Miriam," she said, but the tone didn't match the words. "Well, vintage, isn't it? These old things have a sentimental value that no money can buy. Vintage." She called my house vintage. Henry was beaming, sitting next to her like an obedient dog. He held her hand with that protective way that made my chest tighten. My son had never been one for serious dating, very shy, focused on work, and suddenly he appeared with this woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a reality show. "Mom, Fabi is a digital influencer," Henry announced proudly. "She has over 28,000 followers on Instagram." Fabiana gave a little laugh and waved her hand, as if being modest, but I saw the gleam of satisfaction in her eyes. "Oh, darling, it's nothing much. I just share a bit of my routine, fashion, travel, those things." She gave me a studied look. "Do you have Instagram, Mrs. Miriam?" "No, dear. I don't have patience for these technologies, I imagine." She smiled. "Your generation didn't grow up with it, did they? Must be hard to keep up." "Your generation, right." First, subtle but precise jab. I served tea and a lemon drizzle cake I had baked that morning. Fabiana took a tiny piece, took a tiny bite, and left the rest on the plate. "How delicious, mother-in-law. But I can't overdo it." She patted her flat stomach. "I have to stay in shape, you know? My work is all about image." As we talked, I noticed something strange. Fabiana couldn't sit still. Her eyes wandered. She looked at the old clock on the wall, at the bookshelf, at the family photographs, and especially at a mahogany desk in the corner of the room. "Henry told me Mr. Oswald had his own business, right?" she asked casually, fiddling with her phone. "A workshop?" "It was an automotive parts factory," I corrected. "Oh, how cool. One of those small artisan ones. Small artisan." "It was a good business," I replied dryly. "Of course," she agreed too quickly. "These family businesses always have a special value." "Are you still running it? Or do you have a trusted manager looking after it?" I saw her eyes gleam like a snake that had just smelled a rat. "How wonderful that you can manage everything yourself." She leaned forward. "I imagine it's a lot of responsibility, paperwork, taxes, those things. At your age, it must be tiring, mustn't it? At my age." Second jab. Henry noticed nothing. He was engrossed with his phone, probably replying to work messages. "I manage fine," I replied, keeping my tone polite. Fabiana got up from the sofa and started walking around the room. She ran her hand over the furniture. She stopped in front of an old photograph of Henry when he was 5. "Have you always lived here?" "For 38 years. Wow, that's a long time." She laughed. "I bet you've thought about moving to something smaller, more practical, haven't you? A house is a lot of work when you get older." "Older. Third." "I've never thought about it," I lied, because I was starting to understand the game. She continued walking and suddenly did something that put me on alert. She opened the desk drawer. "Oh, sorry," she said, quickly closing it. "I thought it was a photo frame." Such a habit of mine, rummaging through everything. But I saw her take a quick peek at what was inside. Documents, bills, factory papers I had left on the table. Henry finally looked up. "Fabi, darling, stop snooping through my mother's things." He laughed, but it was an awkward laugh. "Sorry, mother-in-law." She went back to him and clung to my son's arm. "It's just that I love houses with history, and this one has so much." The rest of the afternoon was more of the same. Casual questions about the house, about Oswald's pension, about future plans. She fished for information as if she didn't want anything, dropping poisoned compliments in between. When they finally left, it was already evening. Henry hugged me at the door. "Did you like her, Mum?" I looked at Fabiana, who was already in the car, fiddling with her phone. "She seems interesting." That was all I could say. I know it was fast, but... Henry smiled that way that broke my heart. "I think she's the one, you know?" I squeezed my son's hand. "If you're happy, son, I'm happy." I lied again, because that night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I knew exactly what had just entered my life. A woman who didn't love my son, a woman who had seen something in that drawer, some information, some number, and was now calculating how much the life Oswald and I had built was worth. What I didn't know at that moment was that Fabiana was already 3 steps ahead, and that in less than 3 months she would make a request that would change everything between my son and me forever. 3 months after that afternoon, my phone rang at 7 a.m. on a Saturday. It was Henry, his voice trembling with excitement. "Mum," I asked her to marry me, and she said yes. I sat up in bed, still dazed from sleep. 3 months, 90 days of dating, and he was already engaged. "Son, isn't that a bit fast?" "Mum, when you know, he replied with that irritating certainty of someone in love. Fabi said something beautiful yesterday, that we don't need to wait years to be sure when 2 souls meet. Souls meet. Fabiana had filled my son's head with these cheap self-help phrases. And when will the wedding be? In 4 months, Fabi doesn't want to wait too long. She says she's already wasted too much time on relationships that didn't work out. 4 months, from proposal to ceremony. Barely enough time to get to know her family properly, to find out who she really was. But I bit my tongue and said, "Congratulations, my son. I'm happy for you." 2 weeks later, they appeared at my house again. Fabiana was different, more confident, as if she now had rights she didn't before. She sat on the same sofa, but this time she put her bare feet on the coffee table. "Mother-in-law, we need to talk about the wedding," she began, taking her phone out of her bag. "I've already chosen the caterer, the church, the dress, all top-notch, obviously. After all, you only get married once, right?" Henry gave an awkward smile next to her. "Fabi, get straight to the point," she sighed dramatically. All right. It's just that, Mrs. Miriam. We're starting a life together, you know? And weddings are expensive, very expensive." She looked at me directly. "So we thought, since you're the groom's mother, how about helping with the expenses?" This wasn't a request, it was a demand disguised as casual conversation. "How much are you thinking?" I asked. Fabiana typed something on her phone and turned the screen to me. £10,000. I felt the air leave my lungs for a second. "It's a party for 150 guests, she explained, as if justifying an investment. "Full catering, premium open bar, magazine-worthy decorations. You can't do it for less than that, mother-in-law. People expect quality." I looked at Henry. He avoided my gaze. "Son, do you agree with this amount?" "Mum, I know it's a lot, but..." He scratched the back of his neck, nervous. "Fabi's mum has already offered £20,000. It would be fair for you to contribute too, don't you think?" £20,000. Fabiana's mum. Something didn't add up. A woman who would give £20,000 for her daughter's wedding, but the daughter lived in a rented 1-bedroom flat in South London. An influencer with 28,000 followers who could barely secure partnerships. But I swallowed my suspicion. "All right, I'll transfer £10,000. Fabiana clapped her hands like a child. "Oh, mother-in-law, I knew I could count on you." The next day, I made the transfer. Henry called me that night to thank me. His voice was strange, forced, as if he was reading a script. I thought that would be the end of it, that after this investment in their wedding, things would return to normal. But 2 weeks later, Fabiana called alone. "Hello, mother-in-law. How are you?" "Fine, Fabiana. Did you need something? Look, it's awkward to talk about this, but..." She paused deliberately. "We've recalculated, and the money you gave won't cover everything. The caterer increased the price. The decorator charged more because the church is large. You know how it is, don't you?" I clenched my fists. "How much more?" "Just another £7,000. That way we can finalize everything properly. £7,000. Just. Fabiana. That already puts it over £17,000. It's a lot of money." "I know, mother-in-law, but my mum has already given her share. I can't ask her for more." Her voice became whiny. "And you wouldn't want your only son's wedding to be half finished, would you? Pure and simple emotional blackmail. I'll see what I can do." "Oh, thank you, mother-in-law. I knew you'd understand." I hung up the phone and stared at the living room wall, the same wall that had Oswald's smiling photo. That smile that said, "I told you so, Miriam." In the end, I transferred the £7,000. Not because I thought it was right, but because it was my son's wedding, and mothers make sacrifices, even when they know they are being manipulated. When the money landed in their account, I waited for a thank you, a call, a message. Nothing. Fabiana disappeared for 3 weeks. Henry sent short messages, always busy. "Mum, we'll talk later. Mum, I'm rushing here." "Mum," Fabi stressed with the preparations. And then, a week before the civil ceremony, which I discovered by chance through a post on Fabiana's Instagram, I received a message on WhatsApp. It was a photo of Fabiana and Henry at the registry office, already married civilly. The caption read, "Intimate and special ceremony, just with the most important people." I wasn't there. My son had gotten married, and I wasn't even invited. I called Henry 5 times. All went to voicemail. Finally, he returned the call at midnight. "Mum, sorry, it was all very rushed. Fabi wanted something small, just family, really." "I am your family, Henry." Silence on the other end. "Yeah, Mum. But Fabi has a different vision of family, and I need to respect that." I hung up the phone, and that night, for the first time, I understood that my son was no longer mine. He now belonged to her. What I didn't imagine was that this was just the beginning, because Fabiana didn't just want my money, she wanted everything. And the next request would hurt much more than £17,000. The church wedding was scheduled for 3 months later. But after the civil ceremony, something changed. It wasn't overnight. It was like poison slowly dripping into water. First, Sunday lunches. For 40 years, every Sunday was sacred in our family. Oswald would barbecue in the garden. I would prepare stuffing, coleslaw, that special potato salad that used 3 types of potatoes. Henry would arrive at noon, stay until 5 p.m. We would talk, laugh, watch football together. After Oswald died, I kept the tradition. Henry kept coming. It was my only day with him until Fabiana entered the picture. The first Sunday after the civil wedding, Henry canceled at the last minute. "Mum, Fabi isn't feeling well. I think it's a migraine." "All right, it happens." Second Sunday. "Mum, we already had lunch planned at her mum's house. I forgot to tell you." Third Sunday. "Mum, I need to rest. It's been a tough week." Fourth Sunday. He didn't even call. He just didn't show up. I called 6 times. All went to voicemail. I sent a message. "Son, are you all right? I'm worried." The reply came 4 hours later. "Everything's fine, Mum. We'll talk later." A conversation that never happened. And then the increasingly flimsy excuses began. A work meeting on Sunday. A last-minute trip. Fabiana wasn't comfortable. Fabiana was tired. Fabiana, Fabiana, Fabiana. Everything was Fabiana. I tried to be understanding. After all, they were newlyweds. They needed time together. I understood, or at least I tried to understand. But then came the blow that truly hurt. I discovered purely by coincidence, through Mrs. Davies, my gossipy neighbor who saw everything, that Henry and Fabiana dined every Thursday at her mum's house. I saw him leaving there last week. "Miriam, Mrs. Davies commented while watering her plants. His car was parked out front. I hear it's their tradition now. Every Thursday. Every Thursday. My son had a tradition of dining with his mother-in-law but no longer had time to lunch with his own mother." I swallowed the dry sob and thanked her for the information. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every excuse, every cancellation, and I noticed the pattern. Fabiana was slowly, strategically cutting me out of my son's life. Calls also decreased. Before, Henry would call me at least 3 times a week. We'd talk about work, about his day, about silly things, mother and son. After the wedding, calls dropped to once a week, then once every fortnight, and always quick, rushed, with Fabiana calling from the background. "Darling, come here quickly." And he'd say, "Mom, I'll call you back, okay?" He never did. I also started to notice that he no longer answered my calls. He simply let them ring until they went to voicemail. And when he called back, if he called back, he always said the same thing. "Sorry, Mom." It was on silent. Once, twice, 3, 10 times on silent. Then I discovered by chance that he was active on WhatsApp online, posting stories on Instagram, replying to comments, but he didn't have 2 minutes to answer his mother. The worst came when I realized there was a family group on WhatsApp. The Knight family, Henry's surname. I found out because Fabiana posted a photo there, and someone, probably accidentally, sent a screenshot to a public status. It was a photo of a barbecue at Fabiana's mom's house. Henry was there, smiling with a glass of beer in his hand. The caption read, "Family gathered is everything." I opened my WhatsApp, looked for the group. It didn't exist, at least not for me. They had created a family group, and I wasn't included. I went to Henry's house the next day. I knocked 3 times before Fabiana opened the door in a dressing gown with a feigned, sleepy face. "Hello, mother-in-law, how are you?" Her tone was icy. "I need to speak to Henry. He's still asleep. He came home late from work yesterday. It was 11 a.m. Can I wait?" "Look, mother-in-law, we have a busy day today. Perhaps it's better to call ahead, so you don't catch us by surprise." Catch by surprise? In my own son's house, I needed to give notice first. "Fabiana, I just want to speak to him for 5 minutes." She sighed irritably. "Henry!" she shouted inside. "Your mother's here." Henry appeared in crumpled shorts and a t-shirt, deep dark circles under his eyes. He seemed smaller, as if he had shrunk. "Hello, Mum. Has something happened?" "What's happened is you've disappeared, son. It's been a month since we've properly seen each other." Fabiana crossed her arms, leaning against the doorframe. "Henry, tell your mother that you work. You have a life, responsibilities." He looked at her, then at me. "Mum, you need to understand that now I have my own family." The words came out mechanically, rehearsed. "I can't live only for you anymore. I need to take care of my wife too, my own family." As if I wasn't family anymore. "I understand, son." My voice was choked. "I just didn't want you to forget me." "No one's forgetting anyone, Mum." But he wouldn't look me in the eye. "It's just a phase of adjustment." Fabiana yawned loudly, theatrically. "Henry, darling, I need you to help me with something inside." He nodded at me, embarrassed, and closed the door. I stood there in the corridor of that building, listening to my own footsteps echo as I went back to the lift. And then came my birthday. 68 years old, first time without Oswald, first time truly alone. I woke up hopeful. Maybe Henry would remember, maybe he'd show up by surprise, with a cake, with a hug. Noon, nothing. 3 p.m., silence. 6 p.m. The phone didn't ring. 1:00 p.m. I dragged myself to bed, turned off the lights, and cried for the first time since Oswald's funeral. At 11:47 p.m., my phone vibrated. It was a message from Henry. "Happy birthday, Mum. Best wishes." An automatic message, cold, soulless, no call, no audio, just that. And it was at that moment, lying in the dark, wiping away tears with the back of my hand, that I made a decision. I wouldn't beg for attention anymore. I wouldn't beg for my own son's love. If Fabiana wanted a war, she'd get one. But not the way she expected. Because what she didn't know was that a hurt mother doesn't cry forever. Eventually she gets up, and when she does, she doesn't ask permission, she just acts. 3 weeks after my forgotten birthday, the phone rang. It was Henry, but it wasn't his voice I knew. It was an overly cheerful voice, forced. "Mum, I have incredible news." My heart tightened. Incredible news coming from someone who had forgotten me for a whole month. It didn't sound good. "What news, son?" "Fabi's pregnant." Silence. Pregnant? They had been married for 3 months, and she was already pregnant. "Mum, are you there?" "I am, son. Congratulations." I forced enthusiasm into my voice. "When did you find out?" "Yesterday we took the test, and it was positive." He was euphoric. "You're going to be a grandmother, Mum." I should have been happy. I should have been jumping for joy. But something in my chest told me it was calculated. Very well calculated. "I'll come visit you tomorrow, son. I want to see Fabiana, talk about." "Oh, Mum, better not. Fabi's a bit sensitive with morning sickness. You know how it is at the beginning of pregnancy." He interrupted quickly. "But look, we'll come to your house on Saturday. We need to talk to you about something important." Important? That word never came alone. It always brought problems with it. Saturday arrived. It was 10 a.m. when the doorbell rang. I opened the door, and there they were. Henry in smart trousers and a shirt, as if for a business meeting. Fabiana, in a flowing dress, her stomach still flat, one hand strategically placed over her belly. "Hello, mother-in-law." She entered uninvited. Gosh, it's hot. Can I get a glass of water? Before I could answer, she was already in the kitchen, opening my fridge. We sat in the living room. Henry fidgeted, nervous. Fabiana was calm, almost smiling, like a cat that had just cornered a mouse. "Mom, we need to talk about the future," Henry began. "The baby's future," Fabiana completed, caressing her non-existent belly. "And we're worried," Henry continued, "because we live in a rented flat, small, only 1 bedroom. You can't raise a child there." Fabiana sighed dramatically. "I've always dreamed of raising my child in a house with a garden, space for him to play. You know how it is, mother-in-law? A flat is so suffocating." I felt the ground slip from under my feet. I knew exactly where this was going. "And we thought," Henry swallowed hard, "since you live alone in this big house." "Too big for one person," Fabiana interjected. "We wanted to propose something." Henry took an envelope from the folder he'd brought. Fabiana leaned forward. "The idea is simple. Mother-in-law, you sign the house over to Henry. That way you secure your grandchild's future." She spoke as if it were the most logical thing in the world. "And of course, you can continue living here. We're not going to kick you out, imagine. You can continue living here, in my own house, as if it were a favor." Henry pushed the envelope towards me. "Mom, we've already spoken to a solicitor. He's prepared the papers. You just need to sign." His voice trembled slightly. "It's for the baby's security. For the family." I opened the envelope with trembling hands. It was a deed of gift, transferring ownership of my house, valued at £300,000, to Henry's name, with no clause for lifetime usufruct, no legal protection for me. If I signed that, the house would cease to be mine, and they could kick me out whenever they wanted. "Son, this is very sudden." "Sudden?" Fabiana laughed, but it was a harsh laugh. "Mother-in-law, your grandchild will be born in 8 months. He needs a roof, stability. But you can buy a house. Henry has a good salary. Mom, you know that with rent, bills, and now with a baby coming." Henry looked away. "I can't save enough for a deposit on a property." Fabiana huffed impatiently. "Look, Miriam, I'll be direct." She crossed her legs, that pose of someone in control. "You've already lived your life. You had your house, your marriage, everything. Now it's our turn, your grandchild's turn. You've already lived your life. As if I were a used battery that needed to be discarded. And what if I don't want to gift the house?" The mood changed immediately. Fabiana raised an eyebrow. Henry turned red. "Mom, you don't want to secure your grandchild's future?" His voice was accusatory. "Of course I do, son, but there are other ways." "Other ways?" Fabiana interrupted. "Like what? Lending money you'll never see back? Helping with rent endlessly?" "Fabiana, please," Henry tried to calm her, but she was fuming. "Not now, Henry. Your mother needs to understand." She stood up, pointing a finger at me. "You're selfish. Selfish. You live in this huge house, alone, while your son and grandson are going to live in a tiny rented flat. What kind of grandmother does that? Fabiana!" Henry stood up too, but his voice had no authority whatsoever. "It's true, Henry," she continued. "Your mother never thought of anyone but herself. Look at this house, these old furnishings. She doesn't do anything. She doesn't help anyone. She just sits there dwelling on the past." Tears welled up, but didn't fall. "Fabiana, I think it's best you two leave." My voice was firm. "Fine." She grabbed her bag. "Let's go then. But don't come complaining later that you don't see your grandson, because I won't bring my child to visit a grandmother who doesn't care about him." Henry stood still, looking at me, then at her. "Henry, let's go." Fabiana was already at the door. "Mom, I go, son. Go with your wife." He lowered his head and followed Fabiana. The door slammed. I stood there, holding those papers, reading every line of that legal trap I almost signed, and I realized something. They had gone to a solicitor, they had prepared documents, they had planned this. It wasn't a last-minute idea. It was calculated. Fabiana knew exactly what she was doing. I picked up my phone and called Dr. Allister, Oswald's trusted solicitor. "Dr. Allister, I need an urgent favor." "Of course, Mrs. Miriam, what's happened?" "I need to protect my assets, and I need to find out some things about someone. I understand. I'll need names." "Fabiana Christine Davies." I took a deep breath. And I want to know everything about her. Because if she thought I was a silly old woman who would hand over everything on a silver platter, she was very much mistaken. Mothers aren't silly. Mothers are strategic, and when they wake up, the game changes. For 3 days, I was in a state of shock. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep properly. I kept looking at the phone, hoping it was a mistake, that he would unblock me, that he would call, apologizing. Nothing. Weeks began to pass. 1, 2, 3. I tried sending a letter. It came back refused by recipient. I went to the building where they lived. The embarrassed doorman said he had orders not to let me up. Sorry, Mrs. Miriam, but I could lose my job. I went home, devastated. I started following Fabiana on Instagram from a fake profile I created just to get news of my son, to see if he was well. And that's how I found out about the baby shower. The post appeared on a Thursday. Fabiana had posted stories with pink and blue invitations, our little prince's gender reveal, expensive decorations, custom balloons, a giant dessert table, and a caption that cut me deep. Only with those who truly matter, real family. I wasn't invited, nor did I even know the sex of my grandchild. That day, I sat on the living room floor and cried. I cried like I hadn't cried since burying Oswald. Deep sobs that came from my chest, the kind that physically hurt. I tried to send a gift. I bought a complete set of blue baby clothes, since I learned from Instagram that it was a boy. I paid £50. I wrapped it in beautiful gift paper. I put a card for my grandson, with all the love from Grandma who still hopes to meet you. Grandma Miriam. I sent it by post with a delivery confirmation. 5 days later, the box came back sealed, with a note attached. Return to sender. Not accepted. I held that box in my lap and broke down. Not accepted. As if my love was rubbish to be refused at the door. Sundays became the worst days. Sunday had always been family day, and now I spent it alone, watching the clock tick, listening to the silence of the empty house. I cooked too much, out of habit. I made enough roast for 3, a large pan of gravy, and then stored everything in containers that never emptied because I ate alone. Mrs. Davies, the neighbor, started inviting me to lunch with her on Sundays. I politely refused. I was ashamed to explain that my own son no longer wanted anything to do with me, but she insisted so much that one day I accepted. Everything was delicious. But when I sat at her table, with her whole family gathered, children, grandchildren, laughter, I had to run out before dessert. I locked myself in the bathroom and cried silently so no one would hear, because it showed me exactly what I had lost. Christmas arrived. Oswald always loved Christmas. We would put up the tree together, he and I. Little Henry would hang the colorful baubles. We'd have a feast, turkey, stuffing, bread sauce. This would be my first Christmas without Oswald and without Henry. I thought about not putting up a tree. What for? No one to see it. But I put one up anyway, a small 60 centimeters one. I placed it on the living room table, bought fairy lights, and on Christmas Eve, I sat on the sofa alone, eating a reheated sausage roll I bought from the bakery. The television played Christmas carols, happy families and commercials, children opening presents. I picked up the old photo album I kept on the shelf. I opened it to the first page. Newborn Henry, 6 pounds 6 ounces. Oswald holding him for the first time. Eyes brimming. I turned the page. Henry at 3, dressed as Superman for Christmas. Gap-toothed smile. Another page. Henry at 7 learning to ride a bike. I held the seat. Oswald filmed. Henry at 15. Year 9 graduation. Crooked tie. Embarrassed but proud. Henry at 25. University graduation. Hugged by me and his dad. I closed the album and pressed it against my chest. Where did I go wrong, Oswald? I whispered into the void. I raised this boy with so much love, and now he treats me like dirt. No answer came. Only the distant sound of fireworks. Families celebrating, and I alone, holding memories of a son who no longer existed. January came, then February. 6 months without seeing Henry. 6 months blocked. 6 months invisible. I started having bad thoughts, the kind you shouldn't have, but that appear in solitary nights. What if I died now? How long would it take for him to know? A week? A month? Would he come to my funeral? Or would Fabiana convince him not to go? These thoughts scared me, but they also awakened me, because one night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, a phrase from Oswald came back to my head, something he said shortly before he died. "Miriam, love is not eternal sacrifice, it's boundaries. Those who truly love know when to stop accepting disrespect." And it was there, that February dawn, at 3 a.m., that I decided I wouldn't cry anymore. I wouldn't wait for Henry to come back. I wouldn't be a victim anymore. If they had cut me out of their lives, I would find out why, and discover who Fabiana really was, what she wanted, and how I could protect my son, even if he didn't want to be protected, because mothers don't give up. Mothers are strategists. And I had 6 decades of life experience, I had assets, I had intelligence, and now I had motivation. The next day, at 8 a.m., I called Dr. Allister. "Dr. Allister, remember I asked you to investigate Fabiana?" "I remember, Mrs. Miriam, and I have information, a lot of information. Book an appointment. I'll be there today." "Mrs. Miriam," he hesitated. "Are you sure you want to know? Because what we've discovered isn't pretty." I gripped the phone tightly. "I'm sure. I need to know the truth. Then come at 3 p.m. and be prepared." I hung up the phone, looked at myself in the living room mirror. That 8-year-old woman, gray hair, tired eyes, but now with a different sparkle. She was no longer the abandoned mother crying in the corner. She was a woman about to discover the truth. And when you discover the truth, there's no going back. You either act or you become an accomplice to your own destruction. I chose to act. Dr. Allister's office was in central London, in an old building of classical architecture. I took the lift to the 7th floor, my heart pounding erratically. He greeted me with that serious look of someone carrying bad news. "Mrs. Miriam, please sit." He gestured to the leather armchair. "Coffee? Water?" "Nothing, thank you. I just want to know." He opened a thick folder, full of documents, printouts, photos. "I hired a trusted private investigator. It cost £1,500. He looked at me. "Worth every penny." My stomach churned. "What did you find out?" Dr. Allister took a deep breath and began. "Fabiana Christine Davies, 32 years old, originally from Hackney, divorced once at 27. He turned the first page. "The story of the successful influencer is a lie. The 28,000 followers are bought. There are websites that sell packages of fake followers. She spent about £500 on that," he continued. "The partnerships she claims to have with brands are non-existent. Her Instagram has photos with products she herself bought and then returned to the shops. It's all staged." I felt a chill run down my spine. And her mother, the woman who supposedly gave £20,000 for the wedding? Dr. Allister let out a bitter laugh. "Her mother is a cleaner, lives in a 2-room house in Dagenham, earns £1,500 a month." He pushed a photo towards me. "She didn't give a single penny for the wedding. It was all a lie." I clenched my fists. "So the money I gave was the only real money that went into that wedding," he confirmed. "The £17,000 for the party was your £17,000, Mrs. Miriam." That hurt more than I expected. Not because of the money, but because of the blatant manipulation. "There's more, Doctor." Allister opened another section of the folder. "Fabiana is in debt, very deeply in debt." He showed me bank statements, screenshots of conversations, legal proceedings. "She owes £25,000, his voice was grave. "Divided among 7 maxed-out credit cards, 3 personal loans, and party suppliers she never paid. £25,000. And that's not the worst." He turned another page. "Fabiana has a history." He showed me a court document from 2 years ago. She dated a businessman named Edward Thompson, owner of a chain of pharmacies, a 5-6-year-old widower with 3 adult children. Dr. Allister pointed to the highlighted lines. "She pulled the same scam, got pregnant, or said she got pregnant, asked for money for baby clothes, for a house, for renovations. He gave her £12,000 and the baby never existed." Dr. Allister tapped the document. "She forged scans, used a mobile app to create fake ultrasounds. When he found out, he sued. She returned half the money in an out-of-court settlement to avoid prison for fraud." I felt nauseous. Henry knows about this? No, she moved town, changed her social circle, covered her tracks. He paused. But there's one more thing, Mrs. Miriam, and this one will hurt. He took out his phone and opened a video. Our investigator managed to access her phone. Don't ask me how he hacked her iCloud account. He hesitated. Are you sure you want to see? I do. He pressed play. It was a video recorded inside a bedroom. Fabiana was facing away, taking something from her waist, a silicone pregnancy bump. She laughed, threw it into the wardrobe, and said to the camera, "Tired of this crap, but 2 more months and we'll close the net." My blood ran cold. She's not pregnant then, Dr. Alistair confirmed. And there are audios. He played an audio on his phone. Fabiana's voice was clear. "Darling, listen. Your mum is holding on to the cash, but I know she has it. I saw the folders in the drawer. That old woman has a lot more money than she shows. We just need to push harder." Henry's voice. Uncertain. "What plan B, Fabi?" Her voice. "Incapacitation. We'll get some medical reports. Say she has Alzheimer's, senility, those things. Then you become her legal guardian and take everything." I stopped breathing. She was planning to have me forcibly committed. Exactly. Dr. Alistair turned off the audio. "And there's more. She has a lover." He showed me photos. Fabiana kissing another man, a young, muscular, tattooed guy. A personal trainer from a gym in South London. His name is Ben. They meet every Tuesday and Thursday while Henry is at work. I looked at all the evidence spread on the table. Lies, debts, previous scams, fake pregnancy, infidelity, a plan for incapacitation. Fabiana wasn't just a gold digger. She was a criminal. Dr. Alistair, does Henry know any of this? Nothing. He shook his head. Your son is completely deceived. She manipulates him psychologically. Classic case of emotional abuse. Isolates him from family, creates dependence, distorts reality. I need to show him this. He won't believe it. Dr. Alistair was direct. She's already planted in his head that you are the problem. If you come with this evidence now, he'll think it's a lie, that you made it all up out of jealousy. So, what do I do? He crossed his fingers on the table. You wait for the right moment, and when he's vulnerable, when her mask falls off on its own, then you act. I took all the evidence. Dr. Alistair copied everything to a USB drive, printed the main documents, saved the videos and audios. Guard this as if it were gold, Mrs. Miriam, he warned, and don't tell anyone, no one. If it leaks that you know, she'll accelerate her plans and might do something worse. I left that office with a folder under my arm and a weight in my chest. On the way back home, I kept thinking. My son was being destroyed by that woman financially, emotionally. I, his mother, was there watching from afar, blocked, excluded. But now I had weapons. I had the truth. I had proof. I just needed the right moment. I arrived home, locked the door, closed the curtains, opened the folder, and reread every document. I watched the videos again, listened to the audios, and then at the bottom of the folder, I found something Dr. Alistair had included, a handwritten note. Mrs. Miriam, Oswald once asked me to protect you if anything happened. He was my friend of 40 years. I promised him, this information is your shield. Use it wisely, but use it. I held that note and cried. But it wasn't a cry of pain. It was a cry of strength, because now I knew the truth. And truth, at the right moment, destroys any lie. Only one thing was missing, the perfect opportunity. And it would come at the door of a church, on the day my son thought he was starting his life, when in reality everything was about to collapse. 6 months of absolute silence, 6 months without a word from my son. Until one Tuesday, at 11 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. I thought it was spam, but something made me press the green button. Hello? Silence on the other end. Heavy breathing. Hello? I repeated. Mum? The voice was low, choked. It's me, Henry. My heart raced. I sat up in bed, gripping the phone tightly. Son, He paused, sound of someone sniffling. I know it's been a while since we talked. 6 months, half a year of blocking, of pain, of abandonment, and he summarized it as "it's been a while." "I'm listening, son." Another long silence. I heard muffled voices in the background. One of them was certainly Fabiana. "It's about the wedding, the church one," Henry said quickly. "It's in 3 days, Saturday, 3 days." And he was telling me now. "Fabi," he hesitated. "She said, you can come if you want. If I want," as if it were a favor, a generous concession from her. "Why the change of heart, son?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "It's just that," he stammered. "Fabi's family asked where the groom's mother was, and it was awkward to explain that you weren't coming, so she thought it best to invite you." I understood everything at that moment. It wasn't an invitation. It was a publicity stunt. Fabiana didn't want to appear as the villain who alienated the groom from his mother. She needed me there for appearances. "I understand." I took a deep breath. "I'll be there, son." "Seriously?" He seemed surprised, as if he expected me to refuse. "Seriously, I wouldn't miss my only son's wedding." All right then." His voice was strange, emotionless, mechanical. "It's at 3 p.m., St. Mary's Church, in Islington. I'll be there." "Mum, he began, but was interrupted by a female voice in the background. "Henry, hang up quickly, I need to go." And he hung up. I stood there with the phone in my hand, processing. 3 days. 3 days until the moment I had waited for 6 months. I got up and went to the wardrobe where I kept the folder Dr. Allister gave me. I took out the USB drive with all the evidence, videos, audios, documents, photos, everything that proved who Fabiana really was. But how would I give it to Henry? He wouldn't listen to me. If I came with accusations, he would kick me out before he even saw the evidence. It had to be something he couldn't ignore, something he would open out of curiosity, on impulse. And then I had an idea. The next day, I looked for a computer technician whom Dr. Allister had recommended. A young man in his 30s, long hair, thick glasses. "Mrs. Miriam," he greeted me at the door of his small office. "Dr. Allister called me. Said you needed a delicate service. I need to put files on my son's phone," I explained, but in a way that he can only open them at a specific time. He scratched his chin. "Scheduled message with protected attachments." "Exactly, I can do that." He motioned for me to sit. "But I'll need access to his device or his cloud credentials." I pulled an old photo from my bag. Henry, as a teenager with a mongrel dog we had for years. "The dog's name was Wagger," I said. "My son used passwords related to him. Wagger 2010, Wagger 123, variations like that. He was always sentimental with passwords." The young man smiled. "I'll try. Give me his phone number and email address." I gave him the information. He started typing frantically. He tried 5, 6 combinations. On the 7th, he got it right. "I'm in his iCloud," he announced triumphantly. "Now I just need to schedule the message." I handed him the USB drive. "I want him to receive all of this at 3:10 p.m. on Saturday. 10 minutes after the ceremony begins. Consider it done." He worked for 40 minutes, creating a message that would remain invisible until the scheduled time. Done. On Saturday, at 3:10 p.m., a notification will appear on his phone. When he opens it, he'll have access to a folder with all these files. Will he be able to delete it? No. Before he sees at least part of it, the message will open automatically in full screen. He guaranteed. And even if he tries to delete it, the files will already be downloaded to his device. I paid £600 in cash. He guaranteed me absolute confidentiality. I went home with a racing heart. Everything was ready. Saturday arrived faster than I imagined. I woke at 6 a.m., took a long bath, spent 2 hours getting ready, put on the petrol blue dress I had bought, went to the salon, had my nails done, hair, light makeup. I looked in the mirror before leaving. I looked like a happy mother going to her son's wedding, but inside, I was a strategist going to war. I took a taxi. The driver was a friendly gentleman who tried to chat about the wedding. I feigned enthusiasm. When we arrived at the church, my stomach churned. It was beautiful, white flowers everywhere, a red carpet at the entrance, elegant guests arriving in expensive cars. I saw Fabiana from afar, giving instructions to the photographers. The wedding dress was extravagant, full of gemstones, a 3-meter train. It must have cost a fortune. My fortune, probably. I started to climb the steps, and then Henry appeared at the door. That's when everything I had planned, everything I had rehearsed, everything I thought I would say, simply happened. He barred me. The security guards crossed their arms, and I heard those words that will haunt me forever. I didn't invite you, Mum. The whole family has decided you're no longer part of us. Please, leave. I looked into my son's eyes and saw a stranger. All right, son. My voice was calm, firm. But don't forget to check your phone. Confusion passed over his face, but I was already descending the steps. Head held high, posture impeccable. I got into the taxi and asked to be driven away. The driver noticed my expression. Are you all right, madam? I am. I smiled through tears. For the first time in months, I am all right. Because at 3:10 p.m., when my son opened that phone and saw the truth, everything Fabiana had built with lies would crumble, and I wouldn't need to say a word. The truth would speak for me, and when the truth screams, no lie can resist, no manipulation can survive, no villain can escape. I arrived home at 3:05 p.m., 5 minutes before the bomb exploded. I sat on the living room sofa with a glass of water in my hand. My fingers trembled. I looked at the clock on the wall. Each second felt like an eternity. 3:08 p.m., 3:09 p.m., 3:10 p.m. At that exact moment, 200 meters away, inside that church full of white flowers and lies, my son was opening his phone. What happened in the church, recounted later by witnesses, Henry was next to Fabiana at the altar. The vicar began the ceremony. The bridesmaids and groomsmen lined up, photographers positioned. His phone vibrated in the inner pocket of his jacket. He tried to ignore it, but it vibrated again and again. Fabiana gave him an irritated look. The vicar paused, embarrassed. Sorry, Henry whispered, taking out the device. The screen lit up on its own. A large, impossible to ignore notification. Urgent message from Miriam. Open now. He frowned, tapped the notification. The screen went black for 2 seconds, then opened a folder. The first thing that appeared was a video. Henry pressed play, without thinking. It was Fabiana in their bedroom, taking off the silicone pregnancy bump, laughing, throwing it into the wardrobe. Tired of this crap, but 2 more months and we'll close the net. Henry's blood ran cold. He looked at Fabiana. She was in profile, smiling at the cameras, adjusting her veil. He looked back at his phone, scrolled down. There were audios, dozens of them. He played the first one, low volume, but audible, Fabiana's voice. Darling, listen. Your mom is holding on to the cash, but I know she has it. I saw the folders in the drawer. That old woman has a lot more money than she shows. His own voice, uncertain. What plan B, Fabi? Her voice, incapacitation. We'll get some medical reports. Say, she has Alzheimer's, senility, those things. Then you become her legal guardian and take everything. His hands began to tremble. He kept scrolling. Photos. Fabiana kissing another man at the gym, in a motel car park, dates and times marked, every Tuesday and Thursday while he worked. Legal documents, a court case from 2 years ago, fraud. Victim, Edward Thompson. Accused, Fabiana Christine Davies. Debt statements, £25,000 in her name, fake pregnancy medical reports created in apps. And finally, a video message from his mother. Miriam appeared sitting in the living room, her face tired but firm. Son, I always knew, I always hoped you would realize on your own, but since they took me from you, I couldn't let this woman destroy the life your father and I built for you. Your father's will is with Dr. Alistair. In it, you will discover that everything was always yours. £900,000 in assets, the factory, the house, the investments. Your father left it in my hands until you were ready. But this woman by your side doesn't love you, son. She never did. And the baby she claims to carry doesn't exist. You deserve the truth. And the truth is this. I never stopped loving you, even when you abandoned me, even when you blocked me, even when you kicked me out of the church today. Your mother who will never give up on you." The video ended. Henry was paralyzed, his phone trembling in his hand. The vicar tried to continue. "Therefore, if anyone knows of any impediment—" "I know!" Henry shouted. The entire church fell silent. Fabiana turned, startled. "Darling, what's wrong?" Henry turned the phone screen towards her. The video of her taking off the fake belly was on a loop. The color drained from Fabiana's face. "Henry, I can explain." "Are you pregnant?" His voice was shaky, but hard. "Are you pregnant?" She opened her mouth, closed it, tried to smile. "Darling, it's an edit. Someone tampered with it." "Lift your dress," he yelled. Guests began to whisper. Phones being turned on, people recording. "Henry, don't make a scene here. Lift that dress now." His best man, Mark, approached. "Henry, calm down, mate. Get out of the way." Henry pushed his friend, looked at Fabiana with a fury she had never seen. "You're not pregnant. Never were." Fabiana began to back away. You're crazy, and you were planning to commit my mother." He advanced. "To steal her money, to steal my inheritance." Fabiana's mother stood up from the first row. "Henry, my boy, you're confusing things. Did you give £20,000 for the wedding?" He turned to her. "You, who works as a cleaner and earns £1,500 a month?" The woman paled. Fabiana tried to run, but Henry grabbed her veil. "You used me," his voice broke. "You alienated me from my mother, made me block her, made me believe she was the problem. Henry, please." Fabiana began to cry. "I truly love you. You love my money." He ripped the veil from her head. "And you also cheated on me with Ben from the gym." "Every Tuesday and Thursday," one of the groomsmen gasped. "The personal trainer." The church turned into chaos. People getting up, shouting. Fabiana trying to explain, her mother trying to calm her, photographers recording everything. Henry threw his phone on the floor and ran out. He pushed past the guests, the security guards, descended the church steps, and got into his car. He drove on autopilot, tears blurring his vision. 20 minutes later, he rang my doorbell. When I heard the doorbell, my heart stopped. I opened the door slowly. Henry was there, his suit crumpled, his tie askew, his face red from crying. He looked at me and broke down. He fell to his knees in front of me, sobbing, hugging my legs. "Mom, Mom, forgive me," he cried like a child. "Forgive me, Mom. I was an idiot. I hurt you. I abandoned you." I knelt with him, embraced my son, held him tightly against my chest, just like when he was little. "It's all right, son. It's all right now." "It's not," he cried between sobs. "I blocked you. I kicked you out of the church. I believed her instead of believing you. You were manipulated, son. It wasn't your fault." "It was," he mumbled through tears. "I chose her. I chose the wrong side and almost lost you forever." I held his face in my hands. "But you didn't lose me. I'm still here." He hugged me so hard it hurt, but it was a good pain, the pain of having my son back. We stayed there on the living room floor, crying together for what felt like an eternity. When we finally managed to get up, we sat on the sofa. Henry wiped his eyes. "Mom, what the video said about Dad's inheritance, is it true?" I took a deep breath. "Yes. Your father left £900,000. The factory, the house, investments, half of it is yours. Always has been. He just asked me to wait until you matured." Henry shook his head in disbelief. "And I tried to take your house, tried to force you to sign those papers. You didn't know, son. She blinded you. I should have noticed." He put his hands on his face. All the red flags were there, and I ignored every one of them. Because I was a coward. Because I was alone. Why? "Because you wanted to be loved," I completed. "And there's nothing wrong with that." What I didn't know at that moment was that Fabiana would try to pull one last trick, and that 3 weeks later the police would knock on her door with an arrest warrant for fraud, impersonation, and attempted misappropriation of funds. But that's a story for another time. A year later, I sat on my veranda, that same house I almost lost, and looked at the garden. The Sunday afternoon sun illuminated the trees Oswald planted 20 years ago. The smell of barbecue wafted from the back, where Henry was tending the grill. "Mum," he shouted, "the meat's ready!" "Coming, son." I stood up slowly. 69 years weigh a little more on the legs, but my heart was light. I walked to the garden and saw a scene I thought I'd never see again, my son truly smiling. Not that forced smile from Fabiana's time, but a wide, genuine smile that reached his eyes. Beside him was Caroline. They met 8 months ago. She worked in the finance department of the factory, the same factory Henry now managed with me. Carol was 38, with 2 daughters from a previous marriage, natural curly hair, and a direct way of speaking that won me over at our first lunch. No exaggerated makeup, no 6-inch heels, no posed Instagram photos, just a real woman with a real life, real problems, and real love. "Mrs. Miriam, let me help you with the salad." Carol came to meet me, smiling. "Thank you, dear, dear." I called her that, naturally now, because that's what she was, the daughter I never had, whom life brought me as a gift. Her 2 girls, Lucy and Sophie, aged 8 and 10, were playing on the swing Henry installed last month. Children's laughter filled the air. We all sat at the table, that same wooden table where I spent so many Sundays alone. But now it was full. Henry served the meat. Carol prepared the girls' plates. I brought the stuffing, the coleslaw, that special potato salad. "Grandma, this potato salad is the best in the world," Lucy said, smeared up to her ears. "Grandma." My heart tightened in a good way, because even without a blood tie, those children called me that, and I was their grandmother with the same intensity as I would be to a biological grandchild. After lunch, while Carol helped the girls wash their hands, Henry sat next to me on the veranda. "Mum, I need to tell you something." I looked at him. "Fabiana's solicitor called yesterday." My stomach clenched. Even after a year, her name still had that effect. What did he want? "She's been in prison for 9 months. Henry looked at his own hands, sentenced to 3.5 years for fraud, impersonation, and attempted extortion. And now, she wants me to write a letter to the judge asking for a reduction in her sentence. And will you write it?" He took a deep breath. "No." His voice was firm. "I spent an entire year in therapy to understand that I was a victim of psychological abuse, that she manipulated me, isolated me, almost made me lose you." He looked into my eyes. "Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean being an accomplice." I held his hand. "Your father would be proud of the man you've become. I wish he were here to see it. He is seeing it." I pointed to the sky. "I'm sure." At that moment, Carol appeared at the door. "Henry, darling, the girls want to know if you'll tell that dragon story before bed." "Coming." He stood up, but before leaving, he hugged me. "I love you, Mom. I love you too, son." I stayed alone on the veranda for a few minutes. I picked up my phone and opened the photo gallery. There was a recent photo, Henry, Carol, the girls, and me, taken last week at a similar barbecue. All smiling, all genuinely. I saved the photo and set it as my wallpaper. Then, I opened an old folder, photos from a year ago, Henry and Fabiana, the fake smiles, the rehearsed poses, the emptiness disguised as happiness. Delete entire folder? Are you sure you want to delete? Yes, I'm sure. I tapped confirm, and it was liberating. That night, after everyone had left, I sat on the sofa with a cup of tea. The house was silent, but it was a different silence. It was no longer the silence of loneliness. It was the silence of rest after a full day. I looked at Oswald's photograph on the shelf. "I did it, my love," I whispered. "I protected our son just as you asked me to, and I swear I felt a gentle breeze pass through the room, even with the windows closed." I picked up my notebook, the one where I started writing this story 6 months ago, encouraged by my therapist, and wrote the last line. "I learned that a mother's love isn't about being a doormat, it's about being a fortress. And fortresses know when to open their gates and when to keep the enemy out. I learned that forgiving doesn't mean accepting the unacceptable, that family isn't about sharing blood, but about sharing respect. And I learned, above all, that it's never too late to start over, even at 69, even after everything, that as long as there's true love, there will always be a way back home." I closed the notebook, and for the first time in 2 years since Oswald passed, I slept in complete peace. 3 years later, final scene. The factory now bore the name on its facade, Night and Sun Engineering, Est 1989. Henry was in the office reviewing contracts. There was a knock on the door. "Come in." It was me, with a cake box in my hands. I brought Victoria Sponge, your favorite. "Mom, you're going to give me diabetes." He laughed, but was already taking a slice. I sat in the chair opposite his desk. "Do you know what your father used to say?" "What?" "That legacy isn't what you leave. It's how you teach someone to care for what you've built." I smiled. "And you learned, son. You really learned." He stopped chewing. His eyes welled up. "Thank you for not giving up on me, Mum. Mothers never give up." I stood up and kissed his forehead. They just wait for the right moment to act. I left the office and looked back one last time. My son, in charge, strong, healed, whole. And I, the woman who almost lost everything, had regained what truly mattered. Not the money, not the house, not the assets, but my son's love. And that is priceless. If this story touched your heart, if you've been through something similar or know someone who has, leave a comment below saying where you're watching from and tell me, would you have had the same strength as Miriam, or would you have given up halfway? This story is a reminder that dignity is not negotiated, respect is not begged for, and true love endures any storm. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell to not miss the next stories. Because here we don't just tell stories, we tell life. A big hug to your heart, and remember, you are stronger than you think. See you next time.